Praise God, bro.
What's going on, sports fans? My name is TJAY Jones, and welcome to another edition of the Gumbo Pot Sports Podcast, where we talk about some of the hottest topics in all of sports. Before I get started, I just want to ask that you hit the subscribe button. If you love sports, if you like sports content, please subscribe to the channel. And if you just so happen to be watching this on the State of the Saints podcast channel, I ask that you subscribe to the Gumbo Pot Sports Podcast channel, because starting in February, we no longer will be posting Gumbo Pot Sports content on the State of the Saints podcast channel. So if you want to support, please subscribe to the channel. I will really appreciate that. But on this edition, we're going to be talking about Divisional Round Saturday. We now know two teams that are going to represent their respective conferences in the conference championship. The Baltimore Ravens took on the Houston Texans, and the Green Bay Packers took on the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to be breaking that game down, and we're also going to be getting you ready for Divisional Round Sunday. There are four teams that are going to be playing on Sunday to find out who is going to be taking on the two teams that won and came out of Divisional Round Saturday. But let's go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about the first game that took place, and that was the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Houston Texans. The Baltimore Ravens, they have the number one seed. They were the best team, not only in the AFC, but in all of football. And you have to say that, because you watch some of the most elite football teams take on the Ravens, and the Ravens basically just mantled them, and it wasn't even close. They took on the Miami Dolphins and just destroyed them. They took on the San Francisco 49ers and did the same thing. So they were taking on playoff teams, which makes this even more impressive for the Baltimore Ravens, having the number one seed. They had a first round bye, and they were taking on a Houston Texan team that were ahead of schedule, a team that wasn't supposed to be in the position that they were in coming into this game. Everybody expected the Houston Texans to look better under head coach DeMeco Ryans, a first-time head coach, showing some promise from a quarterback, C.J. Stroud, showing promise on defense with Will Anderson. But the Houston Texans exceeded expectations. Not only did they win the AFC South, but they won a playoff game, and they went into M&T Bank Stadium with a lot of confidence. They destroyed the Cleveland Browns 45-14. C.J. Stroud, their quarterback, didn't look like a rookie, and I'm pretty sure he walked into that stadium with a lot of confidence. But, the Baltimore Ravens clearly showed the Houston Texans there's levels to this. When the game first started, it didn't seem that way. It seemed that the Houston Texans had a game plan. The game plan was starting to work. They were getting pressure on Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, who is known for, breaking out the pocket when things go awry, getting some extra yards, making guys miss. But the Houston Texans in the first half did a really good job on Lamar Jackson. They were getting pressure on him, and they were blitzing quite a bit. In this game, DeMeco Ryans was blitzing way more than he has ever blitzed as a defensive coordinator or as a head coach all season. So when you look at the Houston Texans, they understood the assignment. You had to neutralize Lamar Jackson, and they did just that in the first half. And, the Baltimore Ravens came out. They were kind of sputtering a little bit. I think that you have to look at a lot of these players didn't play for like 2 weeks because the last game of the season, Lamar Jackson, Odell Beckham Jr., Zay Flowers, none of those guys played. And they were taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that was the final game of the season. And, of course, they have the first round bye. So it was a lot of rust, going into that game. But what you seen in the second half was that there's levels to this, right? There are teams that just are getting by. There are teams that are middle of the pack. And then they have the team that's just better than everybody else. And the Baltimore Ravens in the second half showed that they were better than everybody else. And, the Houston Texans, they found the spark. They got a kick return, which tied the game going into the half. I'm pretty sure they came out with a lot of confidence. But give credit to the Baltimore Ravens coaching staff, making the adjustments at halftime. They found ways to get the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands quickly. When you get the ball out your hands quickly and a team is blitzing, you kind of get them out of that blitz. And I think that, Lamar Jackson doing three-step drops, doing quick passes, checking it down to Justice Hill, giving the ball to Gus Edwards, I think it really kind of took a toll on the Houston Texans. And then by that time, I think that the Houston Texans realized there was no answer. So midway through the third quarter, you started to see, the pecking order of the AFC, rear its ugly head. You look at the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, they ran the ball down the throat of the Houston Texans. And the most demoralizing thing for any defense is when you know for a fact that a team is going to run on you and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And the Baltimore Ravens just basically bullied the defensive line of the Houston Texans. It didn't matter what running back was in the game, rather it was Gus Edwards, rather it was Justice Hill, or even a newly signed Dalvin Cook. It didn't matter because the Baltimore Ravens dominated. And then you also seen Lamar Jackson, emerge in the second half, had two rushing touchdowns. He had two passing touchdowns, one to Isaiah Likely, one to Nelson Aguilar. And, when you look at Lamar Jackson, a lot of games were won in the regular season. That wasn't a problem, right? We know about his record in the regular season, very impressive. But people were judging him based on what he can do in the postseason. What can he bring to the table? A lot of good seedings has taken place with the Baltimore Ravens, but they just couldn't get over the hump. And finally, Lamar Jackson really showed up in this game. Rather it was throwing the ball and running it. And you have to be impressed at what you saw with Lamar Jackson, not really panicking when things were, seemed like they were not going their way in the first half. He came out with that game plan. He put the ball into the hands of the playmakers. He made plays with his legs. And then, of course, it was accompanied by a really good running game. So the Baltimore Ravens move on to the AFC Championship game. They knocked off the Houston Texans by a score of 34-10. And what I will say about the Houston Texans, they have nothing to hang their head in shame about. Absolutely nothing. I mentioned that nobody expected them to be in this position. They came into the game against the Baltimore Ravens playing with house money. If they would have beat the Baltimore Ravens, it would have just continued this true underdog story. And by losing, everybody just says, there's a lot of promise coming out of Houston. So it's a win-win situation for them. Now, next year is going to be a little bit different because now you have expectations, and you have C.J. Stroud, who showed that he is, as advertised. You got Will Anderson out there. You got Derek Stingley out there. You got Greenway out there. You got so many talented players. So it won't be an underdog story next year. Everybody will see them coming, but it's up to the Houston Texans to be able to rally around one another and be able to build on this momentum that they had from this season. So congratulations to the Houston Texans, an outstanding season. DeMeco Ryans definitely deserves to be Coach of the Year, and that team is going to be around for years to come. But let's go ahead and move on to the next game, which was the exciting game of the Divisional Round Saturday slate of games, and that was the Green Bay Packers taking on the San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara. This game was a little bit of a slippery one because it rained throughout the entire game. Now, this is the type of game where you got to bring your running game, and you got to hope that it pans out for you. The Green Bay Packers last week took on the Dallas Cowboys, just completely dismantled them. I know what the score looked like, but it wasn't even that close. Jordan Love looked at the part. You can only imagine the pressure that is on him. Over 30 years of really good quarterback play from the Green Bay Packers, and now he's going into the playoffs taking on the San Francisco 49ers, right? And then you have the 49ers coming off a bye week, kind of similar to what the Baltimore Ravens did. They didn't play their starters in the final game of the season, so they were coming in with 2 weeks of rest. And, this game started off, it started off with the Green Bay Packers having the football, and kind of like last week, they won the toss. They elected to get the ball first, and set the momentum. And they did. You had some really good runs by Aaron Jones. He was able to move the ball quite well through the running attack. They were able to kind of pass the ball, get the ball to Luke Musgraves a couple of times on that drive. Now, they had to settle for a field goal, and this was, a really big stop for the San Francisco 49ers, who it took them a little while for them to kind of find their stride. It was something that was really off about the offense. We know that when you are a team, you're a number one seed, you're coming off a bye, rust can show in the game like this, and then you accompany the rain, all right? Brock Purdy came out on the first drive. He had a wet glove on, right? A glove that was supposed to help him throw the football, and it just seemed like it just was not a good fit, no pun intended. I mean, it just was not good for him to actually use the glove, so he comes out on the second drive and tries to throw the football without one. And Brock Purdy was off in this game. I know that it was raining, but there was some throws that you got to make as a quarterback in the National Football League. He was throwing the ball behind Brandon Ayuk. You can see that Brandon Ayuk was extremely frustrated at times. You look at a pass by George Kittle, he threw behind him. Christian McCaffrey, several passes. So Brock Purdy was really having a tough time adjusting to throwing in the rain. And we know a couple weeks back when they played the Cleveland Browns in the rain, it was kind of the same similar situation. He did not play well. But all in all, this game was back and forth. Both teams' defenses, came to play. The Green Bay Packers were able to move the ball up and down the field on the 49ers early in the game. Jordan Love didn't really have any type of problems. The offensive line really protected him, and that's saying something when you have two really good edge rushers in Chase Young, and you also have Nick Bosa out there rushing you, and then you have all those other guys like Armstead and Randy Gregory. So the Green Bay Packers offensive line did an extremely good job on neutralizing the defensive pass rush of the San Francisco 49ers. They were pretty much a non-factor in this game. But two players that were a factor in this game defensively for the 49ers was Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, two of the best linebackers, if not the best linebacking group in football. I mean, you had to throw a lot of passes to the outside if you were Jordan Love. You weren't going to test the middle of the field because of how talented these two guys are as linebackers. So, there were a lot of plays that were made on the outside. Romeo Doubs, who had 151 receiving yards against the Dallas Cowboys, he had some big catches in the game. You can really tell Christian Watson was just kind of out there. He's still dealing with injuries, was out there just taking one for the team. Luke Musgraves, I don't know what happened with him. He came in, caught a few passes. He was gone. But Tyler Kraft, he did made a few plays, getting some first downs. But Aaron Jones kept his team in the game. I mean, Aaron Jones is amazing. And I think a lot of what we saw the last few weeks from Aaron Jones had to do with the fact that he was healthy. Earlier in the season, he was dealing with a lot of injuries. He didn't play a lot of games. So even though, he was dealing with injuries and he was rehabbing, he still was healthy. I mean, he still was, pretty fresh when it came to his legs. So he was able to go out there and make some plays, and he was really a spark throughout this Green Bay Packer playoff run. There was a huge run that he had that set them up almost in the red zone, and there were times where they needed a first down. He really stepped up. So this is a really great weapon for Jordan Love to be able to check it down to a guy like Aaron Jones and hand it off to him, and that magic is going to happen. But we fast forward to the second half. This one game started to get excited. It probably was the most exciting quarter of football was the third quarter when both teams were kind of trading blows with one another. You had a big return by the Green Bay Packers, and it could have been a disaster. It could have been a disaster. Mims runs down the field, and all of a sudden, the ball pops out, and you have a linebacker that just picks it up. I mean, it could have been scary. I mean, it was a big-time run. He got it down almost, I want to say, about the 15 or the 10-yard line. It got fumbled, and his teammate just picked it up, and that set up a Tyler Kraft touchdown for the Green Bay Packers. So that put the Green Bay Packers up in this game. There were a couple key factors that took place in this game, both by the kicking game of both teams. You had Jake Moody, the kicker for the San Francisco 49ers. He kicks a field goal, gets tipped right before halftime, and it was no good. And then you also have Andrews Carlson, who I really saw that coming. Like, if you watched the Green Bay Packers and you watched Carlson kick throughout the season, you knew that it was only a matter of time before he misses a kick that was significant. And he missed a 41-yard field goal. If he probably would have, if he would have made the field goal, it would have tied the game up, and maybe the Green Bay Packers on the last drive would have been driving down the field for a go-ahead field goal for them to advance to the NFC Championship game. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's go ahead and talk about the third quarter. Like I said, both teams were trading blows. Christian McCaffrey was running hard. The big loss in this game for the San Francisco 49ers was Deebo Samuels. He got lost early in the game. There was a play where Brock Purdy threw him a screen, and, he ran. He got a couple of yards. He landed very awkwardly on his shoulder. I thought it was maybe a head injury, like he had a concussion or something like that, but it was a shoulder injury, and he didn't come back into the game. And Deebo Samuels is extremely important to what the 49ers do. They are a completely different team when Deebo Samuels is out there. But there were some guys that stepped up in the game. Ray McLeod stepped up, made a couple plays. You had Jennings out there. He really stepped up, made some plays. And George Kittle made some plays. He had a touchdown in a game. There was a catch that he made that he turned into about a 20, 30-yard gain. I jokingly said on X, I said Brock Purdy has to have one of the easiest jobs ever. Like, all you have to do is just throw it to players that, that are capable of taking a 2-yard pass and turning it into a 30-yard gain. Like, he has one of the easiest jobs as a quarterback, and you can clearly see it in this game. But you have to give credit to Kyle Shanahan and his coaching staff, because they do a really good job at creating these plays in order to put those offensive linemen out in front, and you have some really good playmakers that can make some guys miss. Christian McCaffrey really came on in the second half. He was running the ball really hard. He was finding holes really, really quickly. And having a guy like Christian McCaffrey on your team is such a plus, because once again, when you put the ball into his hands, whether it's running in between the tackles or catching the ball out of the backfield, magic happens. The 49ers, once again, it wasn't the prettiest game in the world. Brock Purdy definitely struggled, made it harder than what it had to be, but they did get the victory by a score of 24-21. Christian McCaffrey scores a late game touchdown with under 2 minutes left in the game, and the Green Bay Packers get the ball back. They get the ball back. They have all 3 timeouts, and they started to drive the ball down the field. The first play that they had, I think, was like an 8-yard gain, got out of bounds, so was able to preserve their timeouts. And then they end up running the football. They get the first down. And then one of the most insane things I've ever seen happen. Jordan Love, you have all 3 timeouts. It's 1st and 10. And you're up here trying to play hero ball. Now, I understand it's like 52 or 53 seconds left in the game, and you're trying to get the ball into field goal range to possibly tie the game up. But once again, this is one of those plays that are classic to Green Bay Packer quarterbacks. Throwing the ball across your body, and you had Dre Greenlaw that came underneath and caught the interception and sealed the deal. First off, Jordan Love, he had no business throwing that pass. It is 1st down. You have all 3 timeouts. Everything is going your way. If nobody was there, nobody was there. Chunk it out of bounds. Live to fight another day. I get it. When the game is on the line, things start to get a little tight, right? The pressure starts to mount up, but you have to make smarter decisions, and that was not a smart decision by Jordan Love. It got picked off, and the San Francisco 49ers were able to take a few knees, and the game was over. The 49ers advanced to the NFC Championship game. Of course, the NFC Championship game will be played in Santa Clara. I will say this, though. I found it funny at the end of the game when, everything was all said and done. they wanted to interview Brock Purdy. Like, no disrespect to Brock Purdy. Let me go ahead. Let me try to pull up these stats real quick. Let me pull up. Now, Brock Purdy was 23 of 39, 252 yards, 1 touchdown, had a QBR of 61. Now, I'm not the smartest man in the room, but Brock Purdy did not deserve to be the person that Fox talked to at the end of the game. Now, I get it, right? This is a quarterback-driven league. Anytime the team wins, they always try to stick a camera into the face of a quarterback, rather he played lights out about as pedestrian as somebody walking across the street. But, I just didn't understand that. Like, I feel like Dre Greenlaw should have been the guy they talked to or they grabbed at the end of the game. Not to say that they shouldn't have talked to Brock Purdy, maybe second or third, you know what I'm saying, just to hear what he got to say, get a decent soundbite. But Dre Greenlaw was the reason for this team being in that position. He had 2 interceptions in the game. One pass was tipped by tight end Taylor Crawford, Green Bay. It popped up in the air. He caught that. And then Dre Greenlaw caught the game-sealing interception, which people were like, man, he need to go down. But look, Dre Greenlaw was trying to score, and that's the name of the game. And I get it. Things could happen. A fumble could take place. I get it. But Dre Greenlaw definitely stepped up for his team. And I just found that very funny that they wanted to talk to Brock Purdy, who really didn't do too much. I mean, he made a few throws in the game. There were like maybe 2 or 3 throws that were very, very crucial in this game that he made. So I'll give him credit for that. But I'm pretty sure if you were to ask Brock Purdy, he'll tell you like this was not one of his best performances. But you argue with a win. I mean, it may be an ugly, from a quarterback perspective, but you still get an opportunity to get the dream of playing in a Super Bowl, and the San Francisco 49ers would do just that when they play in the NFC Championship game. So congratulations to the 49ers advancing. We'll see who they're going to play on Divisional Round Sunday when it's all said and done. We fast forward now. We fast forward to Divisional Round Sunday. There are 2 games that are going to be played on Sunday, Divisional Round Sunday, and the first game is going to be the Detroit Lions taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Detroit Lions, they have the underdog story of 2023, the 2023 season rather. And, everybody looks at the Detroit Lions. They look at them as a snake-bitten franchise, a franchise that hasn't had much prosperity. And when you look at a franchise like this, it's not hard for you to root for a franchise that struggle like that. And a part of you, rather you're a fan of another team or not, you want to see this team succeed. You want to see this team exceed expectations, and you want to see this team go as far as they possibly can. Well, they get the opportunity when they take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now we all know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play in one of the worst divisions in all of football, which is the NFC South. They finished 9-8, and they got a home playoff game, whether it's fair or not. When you win in your division, you get a home game. And they took on the Philadelphia Eagles, and they destroyed them. The game wasn't even close. They put foots in the Philadelphia Eagles. Baker Mayfield looked really good in the game. There were a lot of throws that he made should have been caught. They were dropped by wide receivers. The defense of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers got pressure on Jalen Hurts. The running game was non-existent for Philly. The passing game was non-existent for Philly. Devontae Smith was the only credible wide receiver out there. A.J. Brown did not play in the game. Julio Jones ended up leaving the game with a concussion. And Dallas Goedert probably was your second pass catcher. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did what they needed to do, and now they find themselves taking on a Detroit Lions team that is really, really good this season. Now, this could have easily been one of those games where the Detroit Lions could have been the second seed, which they should have been. I think we all seen the game against the Dallas Cowboys, kind of screwed them boys over. But they still get 2 home games, and you know the Detroit Lions fans are going to be out there. They're going to be loud. They're going to be boisterous. And this is going to be one of those games I feel like it is going to be back and forth because both teams have glaring weaknesses. When you look at the Detroit Lions are susceptible to getting beat in a secondary. I mean, that's their biggest weakness. They're very talented up front, with James Houston and Aiden Hutchinson. Their linebacker group, Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone, they're really good. but it's that secondary. They can give up some big plays. They're young, they're inexperienced, and I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can kind of exploit that. I look for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to try to throw some passes down the field, try to put the ball into the hands of guys like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin down the field, or Trey Palmer. So be on the lookout for that. The running game. When you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they can run the football. They do a really good job. They really incorporated the running game to kind of help out Baker Mayfield. So when you look at the Detroit Lions, you can run the football on them, but they can stop you. I look for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to try to throw the ball down the field against the Detroit Lions, try to exploit that secondary. When you look at the Detroit Lions, they do so many things well, right? They got some talented wide receivers. You got Sam Laporta, the talented rookie tight end. And also you have a really good running game. You got David Montgomery out there, and you also have Jahmyr Gibbs, a really good 1-2 punch. And offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, who was up for several head coaching jobs, has done an outstanding job at finding ways to get the ball into the hands of these running backs and be able to impose their will. Their offensive line is the best in football. And you also have to think about the wide receiver group once again. You got Jamison Williams. You got Sam Laporta catching the ball. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, they have some talent. And then you also have Jared Goff, who understands what the team expects of him, throwing the ball down the field, understanding how the defense is going to approach him. The defense of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have got to get pressure on Jared Goff. You know the type of quarterback that he is. He's not looking to run. He wants to stand in the pocket and deliver the ball down the field. So if they can actually get pressure on the Detroit Lions, it can be tough for the Lions on Sunday. So looking at this, I'm going to have to say I think the Detroit Lions are going to win this football game. I think it's going to be close. I think it might come down to the wire. I think it's probably going to be one of them games where, you got to cross your fingers. But I think that the Detroit Lions are going to win this football game. I mentioned that the Detroit Lions remind me of my favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, back in 2006 when Drew Brees and Sean Payton first got with the Saints. They were a team that were kind of the underdog, right? I mean, a team that never really been anywhere. And all of a sudden, they find themselves like winning a divisional round game and going to the NFC Championship to take on the Chicago Bears. And, this kind of has that type of vibe, a team that is finding ways to win, becoming a credible football team. And these are the little seeds that are being sprouted right now, for a really good team for years to come. So I think the Detroit Lions are going to win this football game, and it should be an exciting game. Both teams are going to be ready. Both coaches are very, very passionate about what they do. Dan Campbell, of course, wears his heart on his sleeve. Todd Bowles is more of a quiet, emotional leader. So should be a good game to watch. Should be exciting. Should have a game that put up some points. And finally, the game, the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, these two teams seem like they play almost every year in the playoffs. It always seems that the Buffalo Bills have to travel to Arrowhead because that has been the case since 2018, which I found absolutely amazing. The AFC Championship game has been played in Kansas City. Like, unfreaking believable. Every single year, the Kansas City Chiefs are in the AFC Championship game, and they got home field advantage. That is insane. Patrick Mahomes is traveling on the road for the first time in his entire career. Man, there has been a lot of winning going on in Kansas City. But they have to take on a Buffalo Bills team that are red hot. They have not lost a game in quite some time. As a matter of fact, I want to say they maybe won like 6 or 7 consecutive games. So this is one of those teams that are playing inspired. When they fired their offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, they have not lost a game since. Since Joe Brady has taken over as their interim offensive coordinator, they've done a really, really good job at moving the football and incorporating some different offensive plays into the mix, and also defensively, they've been playing lights out no matter who is on the field. Last week, they had some injuries in the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their linebacker group kind of went down. Their reserves came in. They did a really good job. A.J. Klein came in, turned back the clock a little bit. And when you look at the Buffalo Bills, you feel like for the first time they feel like they really have a true chance at knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs have been a thorn in the side of the Buffalo Bills for many years. Josh Allen, who has been one of the best quarterbacks in football, I bet you he believes that, if Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs didn't exist, maybe he'll have about 2 or 3 Super Bowls. But this is what, playoff football is all about. This is what playoff rivalries are all about. These two teams don't like each other, and they know that more than likely they are always going to be standing in each other's way from success. So you have Patrick Mahomes, who's coming in, like I said, his first away game in the playoffs. The Kansas City Chiefs have not looked like the Kansas City Chiefs of years past all season long. Now, you can talk about some of the things that are different. I think the loss of Eric Bieniemy kind of plays a role. And then also you have like a young, inexperienced wide receiver group, that has not really been what Patrick Mahomes needs them to be. Kadarius Toney, Skylar Moore, all these different young guys. Now, Rashee Rice has stepped up over the last few weeks. In the game against the Miami Dolphins, he had a really, really good game. He stepped up and made some plays. But this Kansas City Chiefs offense has not looked the same all season long. Now, they got some really good things going for it. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco, he runs the ball well. You got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And once again, I mentioned Rashee Rice. He's stepping up and trying to emerge as that number one receiver. But there's always been, something missing throughout the season. Travis Kelce has not looked like the Travis Kelce he once, has once been. You can talk about the Taylor Swift thing. I'm not buying that at all. I just think that you have a tight end that's getting up there in age and starting to slow down a little bit. But, you need some of these other young wide receivers to step up to make plays in order to make things easier for Patrick Mahomes. The Buffalo Bills, they have Josh Allen. They have a really good running game. James Cook running the football. They added Leonard Fournette. You got Johnson out there. You got Shakir that can, you can throw the ball deep to him. Stephon Diggs, he's making some plays. They didn't have Gabe Davis in the last game. I don't know if he'll be back or not. He probably will. You're going to need him. And then you have a really good tight end group with Dawson Knox, and you also have Dalton Kincaid. So you got a lot of talent on the Buffalo Bills offensively. Defensively, in this game, they're going to have to get after Patrick Mahomes. I think that they're probably going to be playing a little bit of man coverage. They're going to try to get pressure on Patrick Mahomes. And I think they're going to be playing man coverage because they don't really respect the wide receiver group of the Kansas City Chiefs. And, these guys aren't needle movers. They aren't the most exciting wide receiver group in all of football. So I guarantee you Buffalo is going to feel like they have some opportunities out there with their cornerbacks, and they're probably going to be having those guys on the island from time to time so they can get pressure on Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, you got to get him off his spot. You got to move him around a little bit, get some pressure on him, and set the tone early. This should be a back and forth game. I think that both teams' defenses are going to play a huge role in this game. The Kansas City Chiefs defense is definitely better than any other defensive team they've had since Patrick Mahomes has been there. And we know what the Buffalo Bills have been defensively as long as Sean McDermott has been their head coach. But I'm going to say that the Buffalo Bills are going to win this football game. I think that it's a home game. I look at some of the struggles of the Kansas City Chiefs throughout the year. I think that it's probably going to rear its ugly head, and it's going to come crashing down for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that they kind of been staggering a little bit on the ropes throughout the entire season. I think that the Buffalo Bills are going to give them the final blow and put them down on the canvas. So I got the Buffalo Bills winning a home game, setting up a matchup of the AFC Championship, the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. And in the NFC Championship game, I got the San Francisco 49ers in a matchup versus the Detroit Lions. But I would love to hear from you. What do you all think about Divisional Round Saturday? And who do you think is going to come away on Divisional Round Sunday? Comment down below, like and share this video. Thank you so much for checking out the Gumbo Pot Sports Podcast. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. YouTube.com, search Gumbo Pot Sports. You can also check out previous episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor FM. And you can follow me on X at TJAY Jones 8 as my son claps in the background. Until next time, I'll see you down the road.